guys know the Swartland quite well, right? So you know where you are. You're on Kasteelberg here. Obviously in the Swartland there's three main mountains. So in the south behind you is the Paardeberg, where Adi, Eben and Lammershoek and everybody is, which is a huge granite outcrop. And then Kasteelberg here is where we're based. The other side of the mountain is Riebeek Kasteel and Riebeek West. So that's where Kloofenberg and Alles Verloren and Ryan and Samantha are on the other side of the hill here. Right. And then far in the north you have Piketberg, which is kind of about an hour from here. And that's where, well, just past that is where Craig and Carla are up there. So a very
tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, awesome, cool. Yeah, so it's quite a trip.
Yeah, it'll be good to see what that's like.
Yeah, you'll see it's quite a distance, but what you'll notice is in the Swartland most of the vineyards are kind of located on the slopes of the mountains. So between here and Piketberg there's a couple of vineyards, but most of them are on the mountains. So there's sort of these huge open spaces between, with not much but no vineyards. It's mostly just wheat farming that's going on. And we're like most of the Swartland wineries, we're not an estate, so we do have some of our own vineyards, which are here at Roundstone, but we still work with a lot of other vineyards. So we have about 30 other parcels that we either lease or purchase grapes from on other properties. So most of them are in the Paardeberg and the mountain behind us there, but also a couple here on Kasteelberg. So that's kind of the model that works really well in the Swartland. Blending different varieties and vineyards works extremely well. Yeah, it's cuttings that were taken from Piketberg, from an old vineyard up there about 15 years ago. So it's kind of a Massal selection. We didn't plant the vineyards. We only took over this farm in 2014, so the vineyard was already here, and it was originally trellised, so it was on a cordon. But because the vineyards at that time were only about 7 years old, they weren't that big. And we were able to actually kind of retrain them. So we cut them down and we're training them into bush vines. The other interesting thing here is it's actually a field blend of mostly Grenache Blanc, but with a little bit of Chenin. So when we took over the vineyard, there were patches of sections that had missing vines. So for this is Chenin here, but this is Grenache Blanc. You can see they grow quite differently. So it's kind of a field blend of different clones, or a Massal selection of different clones of Grenache Blanc interplanted with Chenin. Insect pressure, there's basically nothing. In the 20-ton tractor, they go all over the show and they keep the pest perfect hedges. We do allow, it's basically a sprawl where we tuck some of the shoots in, but we leave the lateral shoots to kind of hang out, and they give shade to the grapes. So once again, the bunches are kind of half in the sun, half in the shade. And here that's great because it once again keeps that sort of complexity in the aromatics. It's 4 going into 5 years old. And the interesting thing here is this used to be a big wheat field, so it's 20 hectares. And when we started planning it, we were lucky because it was just a blank slate, and we didn't have to move anything or change anything or rip anything out. So we really started with a clean slate that we could really plan the vineyard a lot. And we work with Rosa Kruger, and so this is really her brainchild. So it's I think a fascinating vineyard. So the first thing you'll notice is the vineyard rows are not straight. So we've planted with the contours here. And the whole thing that we've tried to do with this vineyard is to plant it in a way where it's going to be as sustainable as possible and live for as long as possible. And the main thing here in the Swartland is the dryness, the drought that we have. So we've tried to plant it in a way where the vines themselves are able to live without us needing to provide any irrigation as far as possible. So what we've done is we planted slightly higher density, so it's 1.5 by 1.5 meters. So the idea is that our tractors can never get into the vineyard. So where we're standing now is a tractor row, and then about, it's 12 meters down there is another tractor row. So inside the vineyard where we are here, everything has to be done by hand. So there'll never be any compaction in the vineyard. So the roots of the vines can spread as far as possible. Basically after 1 year they're already touching, and then grow down to use the full volume of soil that they're planted in. And then the other thing that we've done is by planting it this way along the contours, there's no one way for water to run when we do have rain in the winter. It runs down, obviously downhill, but as it goes, the vines kind of get in the way and it slows down and sinks into the soil. So we keep as much of the winter rain as possible in the soil. And then if we do have big storms, we built these contours that we're standing on one now, where the winter runoff will get caught in these contours, and we channel it into our dams. So we keep it then for the season that comes ahead, in case there is a need to irrigate. So we've really tried to think a lot about the way we planted it, and making it sustainable from that point of view. And then what we've also done is, because it's 20 hectares, we've planted fynbos in the vineyard. So we've broken the vineyard up into kind of blocks or corridors, and then in between each corridor we've planted sections of fynbos. So this is fynbos that grows on the mountain here. It's 90% of it is indigenous to Castilberg. We just went to a local nursery and they took little cuttings of fynbos in the mountain, rooted it out with hormones, and then we planted it. So this was planted at the same time that the vines were. This was an open wheat field. Because 20 hectares, but there's 16 hectares of vines and then 4 hectares of fynbos. So it's but we obviously can't get any plows or anything in the vineyard. Of the end of the Chenin. Then it's Claret Blanche, which is a bit whiter, and then it's Cinsault, the next 3, and then Grenache. So they all have a slightly different color to them.
Yeah. How old are they now?
6 weeks.